Welcome to another episode of Let's Draw Pokemon. Today we're going to be drawing the second stage of Charmander's evolutionary line, which is Charmeleon. So again, Charmeleon is similar to Charmander, same body structure. They both like standing on their hind legs with their little dinosaur-like arms up and all that. So Charmeleon's composed of similar shapes. He's kind of rounded, has that lot of spheres and oval shapes going on. So there's going to be a lot of lighting that complements the different circular shapes that are on his body. So whenever you're designing him, like with all your characters, you want to start with your big shapes, get them down, and then start adding in your details. So we have a very basic form of the body right now going on. Now we have his torso, which is just a rounded egg shape, a little thinner than a regular egg, but you get the idea. And then his head's right now just a simple lumpy sphere. If you look at his head in the pictures, like reference pictures of Charmeleon, it's a bit more angular than Charmander's head. So we'll be going into that in detail. But we have the placement of where we want the head down. Pretty good. And so then you have his legs and his arms. His arms are a bit... Charmeleon's arms are a bit thinner looking, a little more muscular, a little more bone structure popping out. Like you see his little bony shoulders and his elbows. His forearms are larger. They kind of like cone out a bit. So it's more like the top of the cone would be near his elbow, and then it gets larger as you go down his arm to his hands. Unlike Charmander, after evolving, he has full-blown claws for fingers now, and instead of those cute little nubs that Charmander had. So they'll be similar to Charmander's feet. Charmeleon also has claw toes, which we'll be getting into detail. We have the feet placed, so it's all set up. And now we're just filling out the head. Like I was saying, we just started off with a simple sphere. His head is somewhat angular, a lot of bony protrusions and stuff like that. He also has a little horn coming out at the back of his head that in its simplest form is just a cylinder. And he has a bit of a snout, which you can just draw with a circle and then protrude it out and shape it out that way. And then he has triangular shaped eyes that are a little rounded. And of course you have to draw on those highlights and the pupils and all that fun stuff. And then of course his claw toes, which are fairly simple. Similar to how we've been drawing claws for the other Pokemon. So nothing too new there. And again, of course, everyone knows that the whole Charmander line has little flaming tails because they're a fire Pokemon. So, of course, you have to draw Charmeleon's flaming tail. So we'll be getting some more practice drawing and coloring fire. So like we always do, we are just lightening the sketch. If you're using paper at home, you could always put a sheet on top and ink over top, or whatever you feel comfortable with. And so we're just making sure our lines are crisp and even, and really enhancing the forms that we've sketched out in our illustration so far. I remember watching like the anime as a kid and how Ash's Charmander evolved, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's the first time one of the starters has evolved, and It was so exciting, and then it turned out that Charmeleon just didn't want to have anything to do with Ash. Didn't want to listen to him. Was stubborn as all heck. I can't remember if he had the right amount of badges when Charmeleon evolved. Because I know in the games, if you go and you overlevel your Pokemon, they'll stop listening to you. They'll just do their own thing. They'll be like, you want me to use Flamethrower? Well, I feel like sitting here. So now we're getting on to the coloring. I have my pre-selected palette already. I'm just filling in all the different components. He's very similar in coloration to Charmander, so we'll be shading it in a similar manner. He's composed of a lot of spherical shapes, so we'll be adding little specular highlights and stuff like that that are fun to do. So we're just shading in his body, working around the curved, rounded forms that exist within Charmeleon. Stuff like his forearms, again, they're, as we talked about before, they're kind of like cones. So whenever you're shading them, you want to put emphasis on the fact that they're a cone-like shape. So one side gets a bit of darkening, and then there's highlights on the other. And of course we want to shade in the horn and around the eyes. The whole purpose of shading everything in like this is just to give form to the figure. So he's not just a flat object on the page. Feels like he's a living, breathing Pokemon. So we're forming out the shapes, making sure everything looks nice and smooth and natural. And after we have the shadows on the body, we'll probably go and start shading in the underbelly, which is also incredibly similar to how Charmander was shaded too, because the light source is coming from the same direction and they both have a very similar body type. And so now we're just adding in some highlights to the claws and on the eye. And now we're gonna go and play with fire. So we're bringing the SketchUp that we had faded out so we could see where we were thinking of putting the orange in the flame. Stuff will look a little messy to start. We're just laying down the color, blending it in together, because we want to have a nice blend between the orange and the yellow. And now we're adding some highlights onto his Charmeleon's body. So again, he has similar coloration to Charmander. He's a lot more, his body is more red than orange, which is fine. But we're still shading it in a similar way. Like we're looking at those rounded legs and they have the nice little circular speculars on them to emphasize their rounded shape. The cone-like arms have a little bit of that kind of shading too. So I think we're pretty done here. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.